Hey, welcome everybody to our devotional series, and today we're going to wrap up our look into the mission. We've been this week looking at the mission, which is sharing the good news, sharing our faith. It's talking about the goodness of God and salvation that is found in Jesus Christ. And so today we're going to look at a story found in John chapter 4. It's phenomenal. Many of you are aware of it already. And what I'd like you to do right now is take some notes, if you will, and we're going to go through some aspects of this story that is found in John chapter 4, the first 42 verses. So we're not going to read those 42 verses. We don't have time to do that. I'll trust you to do that on your own. Again, most of you are familiar with the story. If not, you're going to love it. But we're going to look at this conversation between Jesus and this woman at a well. They both come there to get water, and some incredible things happen. And we're going to learn a lot about how we can better share our faith. We can witness. We can do that naturally in our lives. So, you ready to go? All right, observation number one. Begin where you are. This doesn't initially appear to be a promising situation. I don't think anybody will look at it and say, hey, this is a great opportunity to share your faith. Jesus meets this woman at the well. He's in the wrong place, number one, because he's in Samaritan territory. Jesus was a Jew. This woman was a Samaritan. The well was in Samaria. And the Jews and the Samaritans, they didn't get along. So he's in the wrong place. Number two, it's the wrong time. It's high noon. I mean, it is hot. The sun is blazing. And Jesus, the text says, you can read it, he comes there and he's tired. He's worn out. He needs to rest. So it's the wrong time. I mean, you and I have been there. He just probably didn't feel like engaging with another person because he's worn out. And then finally, it's the wrong person. And here's what I mean by that. There's a woman at the well when Jesus is there. And apparently, she's not thought of too highly by the people in the town where she lives. So, if we're just going to be honest about it, we would probably size that situation up and say, you know what? I don't think this woman's going to be too interested. I mean, we know a little bit about her, and everything seems to indicate she's not really interested in spiritual things. I want to stop real quickly. I'll admit it, will you, that I've made those kinds of judgments about people before. And guess what? I was wrong. I was wrong. So, a lesson we learn from Jesus in this story, in this encounter is, begin where you are, no matter where that happens to be. The circumstances happen to be. The people happen to be. Just keep your mind open, your heart open, that this could be an opportunity to witness. Number two, Jesus teaches us in the story to work from humility rather than arrogance or even power. I love this quote by a man by the name of D.T. Nibbs. I think he was a preacher. And he said, evangelism, you'll love this, evangelism is simply one beggar telling another beggar where he found bread. That's so simple, and yet it's so profound. It's one beggar telling another beggar, hey, this is where I found bread. Look at what Jesus did. He was so humble. He didn't preach to her. He didn't announce who he was, the Son of God. He simply, as a man, the God-man, we already identified that he was tired. He just simply asked the woman, hey, could you give me a drink? How humble is that? And he asked her to do something for him. He asked a simple favor. And what he did, if you think about it, is he put her in charge of the situation by asking her to do something for him. And he opened the door for a conversation. We can learn from Jesus I love what he does there. All right, here's the next thing to write down. Find the point of contact. Have you figured this out? People begin to investigate Christianity for many different reasons. There isn't like just one reason why people are interested in the things of God, in spiritual matters. There are a lot of different entry points. And that's why part of what we've been trying to say these last few days is, evangelism, witnessing is about living your life, me living my life in front of people. And we never know what's going on in another person's life that might cause them in that moment to be open to spiritual things. You see, what Jesus did, sitting at this well with this woman, he sensed her emptiness and her inner thirst. So he starts talking about water. Imagine that. They're at a well, and he's talking about water. But if you follow that conversation through in John chapter 4, he starts talking about a water that he can give that'll quench your thirst and you'll never be thirsty again. He spoke to her where she was based on her need and took that and created a spiritual conversation. Think about it for just a moment. Often people are hurting when they start looking toward God. Their interest in spiritual things is piqued. Often it's something that is hurting in their life. We just need to be aware of the situation. Here's the next thing. Have confidence in the gospel. Now, I got to tell you, as a minister, I think we're living in a time where a lot of us who are Christ followers, we're Christians. But the truth is, we've lost some of our confidence in the power of the gospel. I love what Paul says in Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. He says, hey, I got to tell you right now, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. He says, because I believe, I know it is the power of God unto salvation. I trust in the power of the gospel. Look at John chapter 4 and verse 14. Write that down. Jesus said, whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst again. I want you to think about it. How confident is that statement? What I have to give you, what I'm going to share with you, will change your life. You'll never thirst again. People who believe in the power of the gospel. Are you listening to me? People who believe in the power of the gospel are people who see lives changed because of that power. The gospel will do the work. It's not us. We don't have the power. The gospel has the power. And among other things, that should take a weight off of you. I know it does take a weight off of me. I don't change people. That's not my job, nor do I have the power to do it. But the gospel does. Here's another thing from the story. Be prepared to deal with some messy situations. Now, when you read the story, if you haven't already, you're going to find out that this woman's life was pretty messy. But hey, isn't the truth? All of our lives are messy. And that's why, as Christians, we are so grateful for the grace of God. I am. My life is messy. And I'm so grateful for forgiveness and second chances and third chances, and you know what I mean. We find out she had 5 husbands. And then we find out that the man that she's living with right now is not her husband. And think about it for just a moment. If she's had 5 husbands, think about the heartache and the brokenness that she's experienced in her life. It's a broken world. You don't need me to tell you that. And that's why our world, the people that we come in contact with, the people that we know who are outside of Christ need him so much because their lives are broken, their lives are messy, and we're all in need of grace. All right, let me share a couple more things and we'll be done. You got to read these 42 verses. You got to read this story. Here's another thing we learned from Jesus. Don't get sidetracked by discussions about religion. You're going to see as this conversation unfolds that the woman, I think, gets, it's getting a little too close to home with her. And so she tries to change the subject, and she wants to talk about religion. She wants to talk about the Samaritans and the Jews and some of the differences in how they think about God and how they worship God. And Jesus lets her talk for a little bit, but then he draws the discussion back to what is really important in the moment. Now, here's what I want to say to you. We can talk about a lot of different things, but somebody who is not a Christian ultimately needs to hear about Jesus. Because no one, no thing, nothing else saves except Jesus. We can talk a lot about religion, and there are a lot of differences, and there are a lot of things to discuss. And I'm not saying those are unimportant, but hear me well. If somebody is lost, they are not in a saved relationship through Jesus Christ, then the single most important thing that you and I can share with them is salvation that is found nowhere else except in Jesus Christ. So when we're witnessing, let's always remember what we're witnessing to is Jesus Christ, his death, his burial, his resurrection. The last thing I want to share with you is this, and I think it's really important. And hey, sometimes I get discouraged and I lose sight of this reality, and that is there are spiritually hungry people around us. When Jesus talks to the disciples after this discussion with the woman, they come back and they're wondering, hey, what were you talking with that woman about? And Jesus says, look, earlier we were talking about how, maybe 4 months or so and the harvest will be ready. And he says to them, guys, look, the harvest is already ripe. And you know what I think? I think that was the moment. Got to read the story if you're not aware of this. I think that was the moment when the woman was coming back with people from her town, bringing them back to meet this man, Jesus, who had revolutionized her life in that conversation at the well. And the point that Jesus was making with those disciples is something we need to remember. There are always people who are seeking. I've got to be careful, and so do you, not to write people off, not to say, well, no, they wouldn't be interested, but to always be ready to witness. Now listen, I've enjoyed so much these last 4 days. I hope you have as well. I'm going to be praying for you. Pray for me, and let's be witnesses to Jesus Christ. Thank you.